Hello and welcome to Signature TV Interview. I am Vin Martin Obiora Ilo. Today we have the pleasure of hosting a very young, enterprising Nigerian. He is the people's lawyer. For many years, a lot of Nigerians knew him as that one that speaks for the ordinary Nigerian. Recently, something very special happened in his life. You know, if you are a lawyer and you have not become a senior advocate of Nigeria, then the dream for so many people is not complete. Our guest is one of the newest and youngest senior advocates of Nigeria, Festus Keyamo. Festus, you're welcome.
Thank you for inviting me.
Let me start by saying congratulations.
My pleasure.
Was this a dream come true?
Well, if you put it succinctly like that, perhaps yes, because for all legal practitioners, being a senior advocate of Nigeria is the zenith and the peak of your profession. And so, to that extent, it was something I worked hard to get, it was something I dreamt about, and by the grace of God, I achieved it.
Is it something like a pat on your back for years of struggle? Is it how you see it? Do you also see it as a call for higher duty?
Well, so long as you have been elevated, it means that what you have been doing has gotten some approval. Because if they don't approve of what you have been doing and your practice, you will never be elevated. So no matter how you look at it, the fact that you have been elevated, it means that the very creme de la creme of the profession has approved of your conduct. Secondly, it is also a challenge and a call to higher duty. It is an indication that the hierarchy, the top hierarchy of the profession, feels that you have a lot to offer the profession, and they want to call you into the inner bar, like they call it, the inner bar, to come and render those services to the profession. And that's where I find myself today.
You know, Keyamo, a lot of people would easily describe you as controversial, radical lawyer. Was it some of the reasons it took a while to come? Was the kind of run over the years make it come a little later than some of us had expected?
Well, I cannot question the discretion of the very distinguished members of the Privileges Committee. I cannot question their discretion, but I felt that by the time they approved of it, they felt that it was time to do so. So whatever their reasons were before, I cannot go into it, I cannot question it. It's a privilege, it's not a right, it's a privilege. And so at the point when they thought that the privilege was not, I did not deserve the privilege at that time, I respected their decision. I always respected their decision until they thought it was time to honor me.
But some of your colleagues in the legal profession say that the process of becoming a senior advocate of Nigeria comes with a lot of politics. You have to know someone who knows someone. Well, sometimes they say it's been for those that come from very privileged backgrounds. If your father was a senior advocate of Nigeria, he could pull some strings for you. Do you think that there's something, to hold on to in some of their suggestions, that it has become a political thing, it has become something for the privileged not because of the quality of your work, but because of the quality of people they know?
Well, I cannot question the integrity of the very distinguished members of the Privileges Committee. The fact that you are from a privileged background does not also mean that the door will be shut against you when you achieve professional excellence. Because the fact that you are from a privileged background can be a two-edged sword. First of all, it may be a subtle blackmail against you and against members of the Privileges Committee. Even though you have attained some excellence, some level of excellence, if you go by that argument, then you're trying to blackmail members of the Privileges Committee to feel that, well, even though this person has attained some level of excellence that we approve of, we cannot give it to him because he's from a privileged background. So all I can say in response to that is that you must balance those views against people like us. Why was there an explosion of joy across the country in my case and a few of us in the past, coming from very, very indigent backgrounds? I am not coming from nowhere. The entire country has followed my story from the particular day I was called to the bar. I have been very visible because of the type of practice, because of the chambers I came from the moment I was called to the bar in this country. And everybody followed my progress all the way. And they know, and you know too, that I am a living example of someone who has absolutely nobody in the legal profession. No father, no uncle, no brother, no sister, no elder one. Absolutely no godfather anywhere. So I'm a living example to balance those views, that if you think that it's only for a privileged few or people from a privileged background, there are cases of those who everybody can acknowledge that's gotten it from the brows, from the sweat of their brows, who came from nowhere, whose work carried them up to that point. And so that is all I can say at this stage, that there are examples that abound, that people from other backgrounds that are not privileged also made the silk. For example, myself, my dad and my mom did not attend any ceremony of my academic achievements until I became a senior advocate of Nigeria, because of even lack of funds to attend. My parents did not attend my matriculation. They could not come all the way. My parents did not attend my convocation. My parents did not attend my call to bar then in Lagos, because they could not just afford to be there at that time. I borrowed my wig, I borrowed my gown, I borrowed my shoes, I borrowed everything I used on the day of my call to bar, and I returned everything an hour later to those who borrowed me those things. It was the first time during my investiture as a senior advocate in Nigeria, the first time I flew my parents all the way from Delta State to Abuja to attend my investiture. That is the kind of background. That is also, credit to the Privileges Committee. That people like us from nowhere could be given such an honor.
Okay, let's stay with the judiciary a little more. Access to justice in Nigeria, some say, is a little problematic. I was listening to a program on TV just a few days ago, and there was this talk about a lot of Nigerians that are not supposed to be in the confines of the prison being in the confines of the prison, either because the judges don't have enough time to listen to their cases, Sometimes because they can't afford a lawyer, sometimes because they don't have anybody to fight for them. In this time, in this century, at this time of our development, should we still be talking about non-access to justice?
Well, I agree with you that it is a bit of an embarrassment and a shame that we're still talking about this. At this point of development, technological development and all that. But the factors are so many that perhaps it should not be one topic of several topics we're discussing in a program like this. It should be a topic of its own that can take 1 hour to discuss. But let me even just hazard some guesses here and there. You know, the chain of administration of justice is a very long chain. And what you see in the prisons today is a culmination of all the various defects you see along the way, from the beginning of the process of administration of justice to the last point. Why do people end up spending so much time in prison? Those awaiting trial. There are instances where, one, the people have been charged to court on a holding charge or on holding charges, and they are awaiting the advice of the DPP. Those are a category of those awaiting trial. And then the system that we have come to know in Nigeria, either bureaucratic or corrupt, yes, permit me the liberty to say corrupt, allow some of these files to gather dust in the offices of the DPPs across the country, whilst they are waiting for advice. If you don't have somebody who is reputable, who has some connections to push your file to the office of the DPP, or if you don't do the needful, your file will be rotting there in the office of the DPP whilst the person language is in jail. The other instances where those have been charged, some have been charged to court, bail conditions of bail have been imposed, but they cannot meet the conditions of bail, either because they're indigent or because the judiciary, the bench or the particular judge has imposed conditions that are onerous. So we need to look at that area too, how to make sure that, yes, the accused persons come to attend to their trial, and at the same time ensure that they also have their freedom whilst they are waiting for the verdict in court. So that's another part of those who are also awaiting trial, where you have granted them, a bail and they cannot meet their bail conditions. We need to look at that area too. We also look at those who have also been convicted. That's why the prisons are full. Because we're talking of prison congestions. We're not talking of awaiting trial alone. We're talking of prison congestions. We're thinking of those who have been convicted on very minor offenses. So we have also suggested in the past that perhaps we should look at other areas of sentencing where the prisons will not be full. Because all we know in Africa is custodial sentencing, custodial, which is prison, keep him in custody. So we should move away from custodial sentencing. Recently, we also saw the images of Wayne Rooney in England, who was caught for drink driving or something. And then he was sentenced, but the sentence was that you go and do community service. He was not given custodial sentence, because that kind of offense does not require custodial sentence. So we can do, there are also many parts of the world where a first-time offender is given suspended sentence to. They say, look, you are warned seriously, the thing should carry 6 months imprisonment or 1 year, but it's suspended. If you do again, commit this again, you will serve the first one and serve the second one again. If you go and back and commit this type of offense again. So they give suspended sentencing. So all of this kind of, approach can help. We should also consider granting bail pending appeal. Those who have been convicted, who have appealed their decisions, some of them will be waiting in prison and they will finish their prison terms whilst their appeals are still pending. So why not consider granting bails to people pending appeals? So there are so many steps we can take to decongest the prisons, instead of the very funny situation where people are building more prisons because prisons are congested, and the only solution to it is to build more prisons. So you now pack more people into prisons.
Prison decongestion is just a part of, what I asked. I'm also talking about people not having access.
Well,
how can they have access? I mean, how can I, for instance, an ordinary Nigerian, no job, no godfather, no brother, no sister, I'm faced with the challenge of persecution. How can I get fair?
Well, these various state governments, and most of them have tried to establish their free legal aid. I know Lagos is very active on that front. I can still mention one or two other states. I do not know the situation of so many states that I'm not very close to. But legal aids can help where the state offers free legal services. There are so many provisions of the law that also says that the court is also enjoined to appoint somebody to defend an accused person if the accused person is brought before a court and he has no counsel to defend.
Do we see that happening in Nigeria?
The state, yes.
Does this happen in Nigeria?
Well, it does. The court can tell the state. The state is enjoined to provide a defense for the person, the accused person. The only question some of us have asked is how adequate such a defense is, because when you have a situation where the same people prosecuting you now have the duty to appoint a counsel to defend you, whether that counsel is beholden to you or the counsel will be beholden to those persons or the authority that is paying his bill. Because that person, the same authority paying the bill of the counsel who is appointed, is that the same authority that wants the person to go to jail.
But in other crimes, you have such situations and people still get justice.
Oh yes, so far. Oh yes. So it just depends on the mentality of the particular counsel involved. I'm only thinking aloud.
Some have talked
the commitment of some of such.
Some have talked about an overhaul of our justice system.
Well, we've talked about that too over and over, and we are getting there. The reforms are slow but sure. For example, the Additional Criminal Justice Act is a big innovation, but that act concentrated more on how to speed up trials and how to make sure that, which is also a means to decongest prisons too. And to have quick access to justice, to make sure that the state gets a judgment as quickly as possible when it has accused somebody of certain offenses, and to make sure that the person who is accused of those offenses also gets to know his fate as early as possible, instead of having the sword of Damocles hanging over his neck for years without end.
Okay, Keyamo, as we were getting ready for the elections in 2015, you said, I cannot entrust the next 4 years of my life, my children, under the smoke of ethnicity in the hands of Jonathan. He has no clue and idea of how to take the nation out of the hands of insurgents.
And I'm sure you have seen that history has justified history.
Do you trust the man that is on that seat today?
The significant improvement in terms of fighting insurgency is there for everybody to see. I made more statements than that. I told the nation then, out of pure experience, that the service chiefs were bleeding the nation under the guise of Boko Haram. Google it, you'll see. The service chiefs, I accused them pointedly then that they were bleeding the nation in the name of fighting insurgency. Because I knew that there was no way that President Jonathan, with all respect to him, nice man, nice as, the guy next door, but not as a president. I knew that there was no way he could understand the intricacies of war, having not gone through even the most rudimentary military training.
You have to go through military training.
Yes, to
be
understand.
To be a good commander in chief.
That is why in America you can see that one of the things that the voters look at all the time, and one of the issues that come up during voting during the election times in America over and over again, is whether you have served in the military.
But Trump didn't serve in the military.
Yes, but that is what is always an issue. They used it against him, but he won. But the point is that it's always an issue that comes up in America. You know why? Because they're the policemen. America is the policeman of the world, as it is. So it's always an issue. Now, it wouldn't have been an issue if we're not going through a war. But we're fighting an insurgency. We're fighting a war in a part of the country, even though we didn't feel it in places like Abuja, Lagos, and not big cities. But we're fighting a war. We're in the middle of a war. And when you are fighting, when you're in the middle of a war, you need a commander-in-chief. It could have been anybody who knows the in and out of the military. And I made one statement there. I said, just imagine a situation where the service chiefs will sit in front of their commander-in-chief who fought a war 40 years ago, who knows the military in and out, and they will be briefing him. They will be briefing him about what they are doing in the middle, the northeast. I mean, you understand that there is no trick they can pull out of the bag that you will not understand. And we needed that type of person to take control of that situation. And I said that if care was not taken, we will be in our homes in Abuja and Lagos one day, and the insurgents will march into the cities.
2 years.
And 2 years going, I'm sure you have seen it. I mean, you have seen the recoveries they have made, the EFC have made from these military chiefs who said they were fighting insurgency and bleeding the nation dry. I mean, how could they do that? Because we had a commander-in-chief who had no clue about military operations. And what happened on the day of inauguration? What did the commander-in-chief say? He made the first tactical decision that nobody could have thought of. He said, move your operational headquarters from here. You can't be fighting insurgency and you are staying in Abuja here and the war is in it. Move immediately to the point of war. Move your operational headquarters there. And what has happened today? There is no single territory of Nigeria that is now under the hands of insurgency. We have soft targets here and there, bombs, suicide bombing here and there, but that's only what they can result in.
Are you giving this present government 100%?
Not 100%. Not 100%.
But they show better than Jonathan.
No, even the fiercest critics can accept that.
Okay.
Would accept that.
You said it was not possible for Buhari to rule as a dictator. That's build up to the election.
Yeah.
Or Islamize Nigeria because there is constitution in place. But today we have issues like Dasuki, we have issues like El Zakzaki, of course Nnamdi Kanu, and this serial, refusal to obey court orders. Is it not something that punctures that trust that you had in Buhari before the election?
These cases you cited, there are about one or two that are indefensible. But there are some that are defensible.
So how do you mean indefensible?
For example, I understand that in Dasuki's case, there has been a clear decision to grant him bail. And they have refused to grant him bail. That decision is indefensible.
Yeah, but that's the Buhari that you said not be a dictator.
I'll come to that.
Okay.
I'll come to that.
El Zakzaki.
I'll come to that. Now, the fact of El Zakzaki, I still don't know. Because, I'll come to El Zakzaki too. In the case of Nnamdi Kanu, let me tell you what happened. And why it was never a breach by a mile. I'm not one, and you know that I've been in the forefront of human rights. So nobody will come and bamboozle me about public opinion and opinion of certain persons in order to call you to go to their views. In Nnamdi Kanu's case, he was arrested and kept for a long time without them charging him to court. And what happened? They went to Ademola's court and sought to enforce his fundamental rights and to release him unconditionally. Because that's what the law says. The law says if you arrest somebody, even on the capital, after some time, I think even after 90 days or so, you must charge him to court. or release him unconditionally. Now, Ademola made a decision. Ademola said, since you have not charged him to court, release him unconditionally. The moment he made that decision, the next day, the federal government filed charges against him. It is those who do not understand the workings of the law that will think that that is an infringement on his fundamental right. It's a refusal to obey court order. It is not a refusal to obey court order. The basis upon which that decision was made by Ademola was simply that since you have not charged him to court, he needs to go home. The next day they took the decision to charge him to court. At that point they charged him to court, it was no longer in the hands of the federal government, no longer within their purview to release him on bail, to release him. It was now in the hands of a court of coordinated jurisdiction like that of Ademola. Ademola did not make his decision based on the charge before Ademola. There was no charge before Ademola. The charge now properly came before that same court. And it was that same court that ordered his remand.
Yeah, but we're talking about the ones, clear ones. You said
you mentioned that one.
Yes, but you said indefensible.
Now, indefensible because I am, for example, I'm a member of the I'm a senior member of the bar. So I cannot sit down here and defend people who are clearly disobeying court orders. And I'm saying the case of Dasuki, from what I understand, I don't have the paper before me, but I also read all these things in the media. There's a clear order to release him on bail. Now, what I understood earlier was that the orders to release him on bail were based on charges filed against him at that time. And the federal government said, well, they were not investigating other issues against him. At that time, up to that point, the federal government was still right. At that point, when they said we were still having other issues we're investigating against him, the federal government was right up to that point. Let me tell you why. Because you may have committed 10 different offenses. You are arrested on the first one. The court said grant him bail. The court grants him bail on the first one. That does not deprive the federal government from holding you in respect of the second one that has nothing to do with the first one.
Is it not possible for them to come out with all the charges at the same time?
No, because it depends on the investigation. If for example, the things they are trying to gather are far, in between, they are, far flung, they may have to go, all the way. Investigation at times is very painstaking. And then, if you remember, Dazuki's case has to do, according to them, because I don't have access to those information, with national security at that time. Now, I was the one that did Asari's case, Dokubo's case, which everybody is quoting now in the legal profession. You can see that Dazuki's case is the locus classic. Asari's case is the locus classicus that the Supreme Court decision that every legal practitioner is using now to say when national security is threatened, human rights are suspended. I was the one that took that argument to the Supreme Court more than 10 years ago. And I was pushing the Supreme Court and making these arguments you are making now. Before the Supreme Court. Telling them about the fundamental of Asari, telling them why he's entitled to be, telling them all that. All the human rights laws, I quoted them. And the Supreme Court looked at me in the face and said, look, Mr. Keyamo, you will not even stand here and practice law if there's a breakdown of law in this country. They said, once national security is threatened, human rights take a second place. They told me that to my face. And I must respect the decision of the court. Now, when I'm saying that Dasuki's case is now indefensible, is that earlier part when they were investigating these issues, they were completely in order at that point. They needed to exhaust them. But right now, it is too long and their investigation must have been concluded. And they are not telling us that they are investigating further issues again. At this time, since they have exhausted all their investigations, he ought to be released on bail.
Okay. Could it be this position of the Supreme Court?
Yes.
Where they said that when national security is threatened, human rights is suspended. Yes. Could it be what we saw in Abia State in Onwai with the operation?
Absolutely.
Operation
Python Dam. Absolutely.
So at that point, we can't consider the human rights
of
the ordinary people on the streets of Umuahia at that time.
The human rights of the other people on the streets of Maya were being threatened also by IPOB. The federal government had the right to protect the rights of those people on the streets who did not want to join the activities of IPOB and who were being threatened by IPOB too. Did you hear the verdict of some of their leaders of Abia, those who were bold enough to speak like Ojikalu and a few people, who were saying that they were going to take akara from women frying on the road, IPOB members, and they were afraid to confront them. They would just go and grab your akara and eat, threatening people, looking for Hausa people to kill from bus to bus. I have defended all the separatist groups in this country, almost all of them. Permit me the immodesty to say, because like we say in reward they bring word. So I wouldn't have gone to this, but I need to go to this now. Go ahead. I have defended more separatist groups than anybody, with all sense of modesty. I've been the lawyer to BIM for long. The Biafran Development Movement, was okay. You know, I was also the lawyer to Masop for a long time. I brought Wazirike out of jail. You know that? I defended Masop for a long time. All the members of Masop arrested. So up to the point that they gave me a trophy and appointed me there to the general of Biafra. You know, so to tell you I want to tell you my background, where I'm coming from, to tell you my deep thoughts and belief in self-determination. So I am not just here speaking from the top of my head. I'm speaking from deep, history and my deep belief and years I have been in this business. I was also the lawyer to Asari Dokubo, also, who was fighting for the Niger Delta. Are you seeing all these examples I'm quoting? I have also been the lawyer to Charles Oka, one of the leaders of Niger Delta Movement, who was also arrested and charged for treason and all of that. And I've also been one of the lawyers to Henry Oka too. Are you seeing all the separate? I was also, as early as part of my life, I was part of the defense team then. All these cases I just listed, I would lead counsel, but I was part of the counsel under with Ganifa Emi in defense of Ken Saruwiwa more than 22, 23 years ago, or 25 years ago. So nobody can come today and preach to me about the right to self-determination. Nobody. Because I deeply believe in it and I've supported it with all my legal arsenal. But let me tell you this. You cannot campaign for self-determination by seeking to destroy other tribes. By calling them names, I'm trying to pull them down. I'm calling for war against other tribes. My mother is Yoruba. And then you say you are pushing IPOB and you call Yorubas idiots and fools. And you want me to support you? I'm sorry, I will not. You want my brothers in the north, where I have lived, beautiful friends I have in the north, wonderful people in the north, mostly faithful friends. You now call all Hausa Fulani, you call them Hausa goats. And you tell your members to burn down Nigeria, burn down the zoo called Nigeria, that we all are living in zoo. And some people who are elders, who are leaders of thoughts, who are elites, they can find a modicum of logic to support that type of movement. I'm sorry, but I disagree. The right to self-determination is a right to campaign for self-determination, simplicity, without seeking to destroy other tribes too. Without inciting hatred against other tribes. Without inciting violence against other tribes. Without inciting your people. Make a case for yourself. And that is why you can see today, why was there no Python dance against Masop? Masop have been in this business for 10 years. And Wazirike has carried it out in the most reasonable, the manner recognized under international law. And nobody has done any Python dance against him. And he continues to do it till today. He continues to do it to other people. Look, that is why I said that the Python dance, I support it, and it's one of the best decisions taken by President Buhari since he came to power. Because the moment he did it, Where are they today? Where are they? So I do not believe.
So some people say it was that intense because it is the Igbos. And that Buhari does not have any love for the Igbos.
So where is an Igbo man in detention for 2 years now? Over corruption. 2 Northerners are in detention for 2 years. El Zazaki and Dazuki. For 2 years. Where is a Southerner for detention for 2 years? Once the law catches up with you, it catches with you. Wherever your tribe is. But I'm just telling you, give you an example.
Yes,
that if it were a Southerner now, you would have seen a persecution complex.
No,
it's a complex. It's a persecution complex that goes nowhere.
We've heard about the herdsmen. Why?
Because the herdsmen are not claiming territory.
Why is there no python dancing?
Because the herdsmen are not claiming a state. They are not seeking a state within a state. It's just a persecution. I'm sorry. I apologize for using, but it's stupid arguments. Permit me, please. I apologize for that, but it's stupid arguments. Because they are not claiming it. They are not claiming to establish a state. They are not claiming for sex. They are not claiming secession. It is criminal activity. Criminal activity, and the criminal activity is perpetrated where? Perpetrated in the north, in the middle belt, in the south, in the south, in the Fulani herdsmen are perpetrating criminality everywhere. And at a point, the federal government said enough is enough. Move against them. That's what the federal government said. Enough is enough. Move against them.
Moving against them is being successful.
Well, that's another issue. That's another issue altogether. I do not see, for example, recently there have been a lot of activities of them. This problem of the herdsmen, do you realize that they've been there all along? They were even very intense under Jonathan's regime. Remember the issue in the plateau? There will be killings in the plateau. Remember? Yeah. The Fulani herdsmen killing the plateau under Jonathan. The issues have always been there. It's unfortunate that our people, once they bring tribal connotations into everything, the moment the Fulani man became the president, the people decided to highlight that problem because you now have the Fulani man.
But this is the same. This is the same man you said had a magic capsule when it comes to security issues.
When it came to people claiming territory like the Boko Haram, who wanted to take part of Nigeria away, that was what I said. And now he has claimed every single territory back. Let me tell you this: no government in the world, including Buhari, can have absolute control over crime and criminality. There's nowhere, nobody in the world. That would be a complete, myopia. I mean, nobody can. To say that it would be myopic of me to say you have complete control over insurgents, over criminal activities. What we see now are complete criminal activities going on here and there. So anybody who is trying to equate Fulani herdsmen and the activities of people who are actively seeking for arms to disengage part of Nigeria away, to remove part of Nigeria as a state, that person is dishonest in his thoughts and logic.
Okay, some people say you have become, forgive me, an apologist, or it was a very strong supporter of whatever Buhari.
I'm a comparative supporter.
And that's not the Festus Keyamo they've known all these years.
Let me tell you.
Who was so hard on Jonathan, who would not give Jonathan any chance, and here you are.
I mean, let me express my thoughts very clearly here today to you, and for those who care to listen. We find ourselves in a situation where we have two contending forces for power in Nigeria now. There's no third force anywhere. I mean, I'm talking of practically. We're talking of the old guard coming, from the old regime, the PDP. And then we have the APC led by President Buhari, who is the leader of the party and the president of the party. We fought so hard for 16 years, and I'm sure you know that I put my blood and my sweat, and so many activists, even civil society, and opposition at that time, into dethroning the PDP. We wanted good governance. We wanted to move away from that era of profligacy, that era of waste, that era of all of that. We wanted to move away from that. All Nigerians put hands on deck. Now it will be extremely stupid of me, after all those years of toil,
to now play back into the hands of those same people we fought for 16 years, to play right back into our hands just 2 years after they've left power, by mounting opposition to also unseat the Buhari regime.
Even when they're doing things wrong?
No. I'll tell you this. I'm coming to that. To unseat, because the purpose of stringent opposition at times to call for change. So the kind of opposition we are giving to the government now is a kind of opposition for them to improve. The reason is that we don't want to play into the hand, because between you and me, once this order changes now, what we have is back to where we are coming from. I wish there was a third force, Vin. I wish we have the likes of a Macron, a young, bright person with popular followership everywhere, coming from a third force to unseat these old guards we have in both APC and PDP. I wish we had it. We have it. We don't have it. We don't have it. Practically we don't have it. Practically, I'm being honest, practically we don't have it. So what we need to do now, at the same time as we put pressure on this present regime to improve and watch them and give them enough time, just like we gave PDP enough time to improve, we cannot play back into the hands of the PDP. So what we have is what they call comparative support, not absolute support, comparative, well, compared to what we have before. That's what I describe as comparative support. Compared to what we have before. So nobody will think we got me. And in fact, that is even the problem civil society is facing. You can see that most civil society, they are a bit also cautious with the Buhari's regime. Because civil society also understands that any groundswell of opposition, they are not seizing power. It's what the mistake we all made before 1999. We don't want to make that mistake again. Where we mounted opposition against the military, with bonfires, strikes, protests, only to fall right into the hands, because we were not ready for power of the civil society. Rights activists, they were not ready for power. They did not form themselves into a power block. They only formed themselves into some protest blocks. They were not formed into some power block to grab power when the military left. And what happened? Once the military left, the bad boys, in quotes, I use it advisedly. I mean, people who were core politicians, who were not also pro-democracy activists, they just walked in and grabbed the spoils. This is the same thing also that we are seeing. Apart from the leadership of the party, which is perhaps the president and Oshibajo and one or two other top hierarchy of the party, you can see that everybody coming behind the APC, they were perhaps in PDP before too. They're a mixture of PDP and those who have been in the APP and the old guard and all of that. So what we have is, like I said, comparative support, because you have a leadership that's always been the head of the APC, the president, and of course the vice president, and a few of the leaders of the party that have always been in opposition. They have always all their lives been in opposition from 1999. They never went to the ruling party. So those are the people you must give some chance to improve. Whilst of course criticizing them where they need to criticize them, I just told you that the continued detention of Dazuki is indefensible. What is that? Is that praise?
Okay.
No, hold on. Is that praise? I just told you that the continued detention of Dazuki is indefensible. But I will not seek to pull down the house that I actively participated in building just a few months or 2 years into their establishment. I do not need anything from government.
They need more time.
They need more time, but they need constructive and constant pressure and criticisms to improve. But we will not seek for change now. Because if we seek for change now, we are playing right back into the time and period of Dazuki Gate. We will not want it for now.
Okay, the anti-corruption law. Do you think that Buhari and the APC have done well?
They have not won the war. They have only...
Are they fighting to win?
They are fighting to win, but they have not won the war. The reason is that corruption is so endemic in the system that I bet you few years few arrests here and there will not wipe out corruption. Few prosecutions here and there will not wipe out corruption. The only thing they have succeeded in doing is to bring it back to the front burner. We're not talking about it now. You're talking about it. You're asking me about it. So corruption is back on the front burner. It was not so under Jonathan's regime. It was not on the front burner. It took a back seat because then stealing was not corruption. That was a popular phrase we heard then. So what we are doing now is that we are talking about it. And apart from talking about it, there has been more massive recoveries of stolen funds than we ever witnessed since 1999. Direct stealing from the coffers of government. It is only in Nigeria again that you see a house worth 37 billion naira in Banana Island that the federal government confiscates in an interim, procedure, advertises for anybody to come out and claim, we have seized the interim, come out and claim if you are the owner, and nobody comes out.
Only in
37, only in Nigeria, and only under this regime. Tell me under what regime did it happen again? That's to tell you the painstaking effort that the present leadership of the EFCC and this particular government has undergone to recover stolen funds. The strategy has always been recover, deprive them from spending the stolen funds.
Okay, we're all talking about corruption, but some Nigerians are saying, and I'm asking this question because I know your background, you're a civil rights activist, human rights lawyer, and all that. Most Nigerians are saying that the recovery is good, but they're just scratching the surface. That the real capsule, the cancerous cell of corruption, are the things that government and leadership, not just the Buhari of today, has not done. For instance, our pension policy in the country, treatment of civil servants, gratuities, and what have you. When a young man who is just out of university goes into a job, dedicates his life, and suddenly his director retires, and for another 1 year he sees a robust director that retired limping, with a stroke, and can't even feed the family, can't pay for school fees for their children. And they say policies that encourages this kind of scenario is actually what drives a lot of people to be corrupt.
I told you before, I said we have not won the war, and we are only concentrated on raising the issues.
And that's why I'm asking, what would be the best way to win the war, to get the recoveries, and burst the capsule?
I don't think that there is a good pay for a day's work in Nigeria. And that's the beginning point, especially in the public service. I think it is extremely disgraceful if you look at the salary scale of civil servants, because you know that the greatest corruption takes place in the civil service on a daily basis. It is extremely heartbreaking to know that the minimum wage is still 18,000 naira. Right now, that is less than $50, I guess, or about that. It is extremely disgraceful. And I understand that this is not an overnight thing that just happened yesterday. It has been a culmination of various policies over and over and over that we have seen over the years. Policies that do not encourage, hard work in the civil service. Policies that encourage corruption in the civil service, because the authorities know that these civil servants are not depending on this income for survival. But they just deliberately close their eyes to it. Oh, successive governments know. So nobody has sat down to ask the hard questions. How do they survive beyond their salaries? Are they animals? We are treating our civil servants like animals. All governments, including this one, they have failed to just sit down to ask a very hard question. If you know that they are not surviving on it, then you know that corruption is going on. So it is just an unwritten policy to allow this corruption go on, because that's the only way you can preserve the civil service. It's the only way you can preserve them. Preserve work. Preserve those who work for you.
Because that's not the right way.
It's abnormal. It's abnormal. It's condemnable. So we must ask the hard questions. And I do not see that this government has addressed that issue. I do not see so. I do not see it. They'll be talking a lot about auditing here and there. Before you finish auditing, those who are working for you should not die now. While you are auditing ghost people, the ones that are not ghosts before you now turn them to be ghosts overnight, the real ghosts overnight, let them survive. I support the NLC in their push to raise the minimum wage to at least 45,000. I support their push. I support that effort all the way, because we must give them, our civil servants, some life, some living wage. They must earn some kind of living wage, and that is the beginning of fighting corruption in the civil service. So that you must have some moral high ground to now arrest people when they now engage in impunity, sidetrack due process. You must have some moral high ground to arrest them and try them, because then you would have known that you have done all you can. With apologies, just like a wife you keep at home and you do everything for her and you give her all the pleasures of the world. You will now have the moral high ground to complain if she goes outside and become unfaithful to you. You have the moral high ground to tell everybody that this is what I have done for her.
Well, like you said, the corruption fight is ongoing. It's not won yet.
Absolutely not.
But it's still disturbing for a lot of Nigerians and for a lot of people like you who put so much trust, so much belief in the capacity of Mr. President to fight corruption, with some of the things we are seeing today. Let me take you back.
Not absolute belief.
Well, okay.
So you always put in the context. I always use comparative belief.
Comparative belief. Okay.
Compared to what we had before.
Okay. Let's look at the Secretary to Government. You know the story. He's been suspended. Okay? Let's look at what has happened in NNPC, where the Minister of State, for instance, says that he's been blindsided, sidelined in decision making against the Act and the Constitution. And then you see this pop-up of corruption here and there. Is it not something that worries people?
Absolutely. My greatest worry is the non-disclosure of the contents of those reports, those investigation reports. Not only, you've not even mentioned all. The Ikoyi cash is also an issue you've not mentioned too. And then, of course, that of the SGF, the grass cutter issue, in quotes. My worry is the non-disclosure of the report of those investigations. Because what I would want, ideally, is for those reports to be made public, and if they have been indicted, if persons have been indicted, to be punished, not only removed from office, they should be charged to court. But it appears to me that the president is too slow to act on these issues. It also appears to me that the president may be a bit weak also when it comes to those who are close to him to take decisive actions. That is what it appears to me in these particular cases, without, of course, knowing the contents of those reports. Because if they have cleared them, come out to say they have cleared them. If they have indicted them, come out to say they have indicted them. Well, that's also what I want to see with respect of this accusation back and forth, with respect of the NNPC. We have heard the side of the Minister of State. We've also heard the reply by Barrow. I would not expect that this matter will be treated as a family affair. They hug themselves like we saw yesterday.
Yes.
We hug themselves and say, And I saw some of the headlines and I felt a bit scandalized. You know what the headlines I saw? Baru, Kachiku reconcile to move the oil industry forward. So was it an issue of a personal quarrel? It was never an issue of a personal quarrel. But the press now portrayed it, the way I saw it, to say, well, they have closed ranks.
I think it was laughable.
It was laughable that you are closing ranks in respect of grave allegations. I would expect some high-powered investigation. I would expect a report to be brought whoever has breached the law to be removed from office, charged to court, and prosecuted, and if possible, sentenced at the end of the day. That is what I would love to see. I don't think that it is right for some of these cases to have been treated with such levity, or with the slowness and the speed, with the very lethargic speed that we have seen.
Okay, do you support those that say that probably Mr. President's health has become an issue with his leadership capacity?
Well, I am not a doctor. I'm not a medical personnel. So what people have just done, they're just hazard guesses.
We talked about speed.
Yes.
And we know the Buhari that we all have in our head is a man of action. But is it not possible that...
But also in 1985 too, during the coup speech of General Babangida, he also accused him of being slow to take certain decisions too. Okay, so whether it is his style, his natural style, or his health, I cannot hazard a guess. All I know is that, of course, for those periods, those weeks or months he was away, it affected the efficacy of government. I know, of course, that IPOB would not have tried like that if the president was around at that time, because there's a difference. There's an extent to which the acting president would have commanded the army to take definite decisions, and I'm sure, even though he had full powers to so do, I'm sure he was also cautious because he was still not the number one to take those very definite decisions. And you can see that the moment the president came, and in 1 week there was some dance of some python. It was all over. Everybody scattered.
And now that we're talking about it, do you think that it's right for Mr. President, as of today, to still remain the oil minister?
Well, the problem is that the president, being the president or commander-in-chief, is the overall minister. He's the one that gives instruction to all ministries. So he can decide whether he's even appointed a minister directly or not. He directs the ministers. It's a matter of nomenclature. He can also appoint a substantive oil minister, but don't forget that the roles of a minister of petroleum, they are not included, they are not spelled out in the constitution. So that's the short-sightedness of so many people who say, remove him, don't remove him, he should not be. He can appoint a substantive minister of petroleum and tells him, do not give any instruction, do not give me any order in this respect. Here, there, unless you consult me. It's still not the same thing. It's still the same thing. Because the only minister, the only person, cabinet member whose roles are spelled out in the constitution is the Attorney General of the Federation. That's his powers are clearly spelled out and preserved by the constitution.
So the other ones are the pleasure of the
At
president?
the pleasure of the president. So really,
but if you sat down with him like we are seated now,
yes,
what would you advise him?
well, that if his capacity and his time does not allow him to really supervise and superintend the ministry, he should appoint a substantive minister and give him full powers, subject of course to the normal checks and balances of the Federal Ministerial Council, the Federal Executive Council, and of course the power of the president to supervise him.
Okay, Mr. Keyamo, let's look at the big thing today. It has become fashionable to talk about restructuring. Let me start by saying, when we talk about restructuring, what does it mean to you?
No,
or
see,
what do you think it should be?
the summary of restructuring, the summary of it is simply how to politically empower the different groups in this country, ethnic groups in this country, and interests in this country. Give them political autonomy give them political, empower them without, of course, making them economically unviable. As you are giving them political autonomy, they must also become economically viable. That is the summary of the whole argument regarding restructuring. So that there will be, let's say, push of centripetal and centrifugal. The whole argument is being centrifugal. Come out from the center. Center is too loaded. Center is too powerful. So there's the whole argument. One thread running through all the arguments. One thread, single thread, is to weaken the center in favor of federative units.
Is restructuring restricted to political restructuring?
That is why I said weaken the center. Is that fiscal federalism? One thread. I said one thread running through. Fiscal federalism. Take money from the center, give to the regions. State police. Take police from the center, give to the regions. Political power. Take from the center, give to the regions. The exclusive legislatives, concurrent list, reduce them, give to the states. Are you seeing all the arguments? All the arguments, one by one, it's all about taking from the center, whether political, fiscal federalism, state police, anything, and giving more powers to the regions. Now, I don't think we should be talking about the imperative of restructuring again. We have been doing this over and over and over, and I think there's some general consensus that there is an imperative for restructuring. What we should be talking about is the feasibility of restructuring. Because we can be so carried away with this, work ourselves up, without even looking at where we are going. How feasible is it? Let me tell you how difficult we are, or the kind of difficult situation we find ourselves now, that people don't. Some people think that, restructuring is just around the corner, it's just around the corner. Keep this state. Preserve it. 10 years later, come back and play to me here, these same spots. We are going to talk about the same thing, not going to happen with the present political and constitutional setup that we have.
How do we make it possible?
Let me tell you how difficult it is.
Tell me
there is no restructuring.
How we can do it.
Because I must tell you the impediments first.
Okay.
There is no restructuring that can take place now without having a brand new constitution. Because the whole thing is about the constitutional order of the country. So you must, to restructure, you must have a brand new constitution now. To have a brand new constitution now, there are only 3 avenues to have by which you can have a brand new constitution. 1, outright revolution that sweeps away of the government. Popular revolution. And some kind of interim government like the one that happens in Egypt and all that, and a new constitution comes. We cannot fathom that. We cannot support that. There will be too much bloodshed. There will be too much chaos. We may not survive it. The second one is a military takeover. We have seen enough of it, and we have seen how the damage they have done to our democracy and damage they have done to our progress over the years. Because it ends up being the military people and their small coterie of friends that the one that made the oil billionaires all over Nigeria now. Give people oil blocks, oil as they like. Nobody can question them. We're all, sentenced to silence under the military. The third one is by constitutional review, which is what is permissible under the democratic setting we find ourselves today.
Using the National Assembly?
Using the National Assembly, which I'm going through section 9 of the 1999 Constitution as amended. No restructuring can take place now without section 9. Section 9 tells you the mode by which you want to amend the Constitution. Now, what is the mode? The Constitution clearly spells out how you can amend the Constitution. It must go to the National Assembly. The lure of those who go to the National Assembly today, the power, the lure of them, the attraction, is the enormous powers they wield. The enormous powers that they wield. Especially through their committee work, the oversight functions they wield. You have covered the National Assembly. You are close to, you know as well as I do, that the major perks of office and income of the legislators today come from the committee work. And the committees, the Senate has about 43 committees, the House of Representatives have about 63 committees. The committees are empaneled in respect of those items under which they have powers to make laws, which is the exclusive list and the concurrent list. In other words, you cannot form committee over an issue you don't have power over. You cannot form committee, for example, over local government election, because local government election is not under the federal structure, it's under states. So that's the point I'm saying. You can. So there are powers, there are enormous powers by which they summon heads of agencies, summon this, they make committees. It's in respect of those items under the concurrent and legislative. That is the wide powers they have. So in summary, if you take the battle of restructuring to the National Assembly, that have powers to change the constitution, you are telling them to share the very powers that they wield. You are telling them to remove the very lure of the office, the very lure, that the very things that lure them in the first place to contest for those offices. That's what you are telling them. It's not going to happen. That is why you see that all these constitutional amendments have been taking place. Have you seen them talk about devolution of power? From federal to state? No. All the constitutional amendments taking place since, under these joint committees headed by Kweri Madu and all of that, have been, that we talked about other issues like splitting the office of the AG. They have debated issues like local government autonomy and co. They have never touched their enormous power. There's those powers that they wield. They have not touched them. And that is exactly what we're talking about. There's also no provision for a referendum in the entire 1999 Constitution. There's no provision. So if you even hold a referendum today, it is unconstitutional. It is null and void. The referendum will have no force of law. Because you know why? You have to go back to the National Assembly with the referendum again. The result to say, now, please amend the constitution with this result of the referendum. You have to put pressure on them. So you can see, that even the document that Jonathan got at the end of the day through his national political conference, that document ended up, even before Buhari, it ended up a dead document in the hand of Jonathan. He could not do anything with it. It was just a political smoke screen. That's why some of us were shouting there that it was nothing but a fraud. It was because at the end of the day, people did not ask simple questions. How are you going to implement this decision?
So how do we get out of this quagmire?
It is to reform our electoral system. Let me tell you.
And get the right people?
And when you reform the electoral system, that your votes can count. When your votes can count and they know that the popular view is to reform, is to restructure, and they know that it's a campaign team, it must be a campaign team, and they will hold you accountable for your campaign promises, then they will sit up. As it is today, nobody depends on your votes. I'll tell you that. People do not depend on your votes. Majority of those elected, especially at those levels, they don't depend on votes. So we need to go back. It's just like when you want to catch a monkey. You will do the first step, second step, third step before you know it's inside the trap. Let us first of all tell them to reform the electoral system in such a way that votes from the polling units, I'm not talking of the states, I'm not talking of even the local government, the polling units are transmitted automatically, electronically to a central system. The real problem of our election has been the collation of results. You know that? That has been the problem, the collation of results. If we can have that and have true a complete reformed electoral system, we can hold people accountable to their promises. Now, you see all politicians jumping on the train of restructuring. You see them? Let me warn you that not everybody shouting restructuring wants restructuring. People are just jumping on the train and jumping out at every bus stop at their convenience. Oh, restructuring, not restructuring. Whereas those people who are shouting restructuring are elected into office, you won't hear restruct in their mouth again. You won't hear restruct, not to talk of restructuring. You won't hear anything from them again in their mouth.
Mr. Keyamo, here we are. We want restructuring. We want to make more effective our anti-corruption work. We want to make sure that our leaders serve us better. We want to make sure that Nigeria remains one. In a few sentences, what would be your advice to all this?
It's very simple. There is no way out now, in respect of pushing for good governance, when you stay completely aloof from politics of your country. The only way to reform the system now is to grab political power or to influence those who hold political power. And that's the decision some of us have taken. And I want to make it very clear that I may not have an ambition to run for office or to hold public office, but I will not stay quiet. I will not keep quiet in respect of those on comparative basis who should hold public office. I will not sit on the fence. I will not say that my duty is just to sit on the fence and be criticizing all sides. When the options are down to zero, I must make a decision and make it public. That look, this is what we have now, and this is what we must prefer at this point, because, like I said, we must properly guide our people. There's no third choice now. We must also pray for a third force to come up, and the third force must be completely different from the philosophies of the APC and the PDP that are peopled, except of course I said the leadership of the APC, that are peopled with most of our old politicians. We must campaign for that third force that can come and balance things up a bit. People that are completely different, completely new, people that can think outside the box from the traditional politicians, you know, not necessarily Donald Trump or a person who behaves like Donald Trump, but you can see Donald Trump came from absolutely nowhere, not from the normal political blocks of the American democratic order or political system that we knew before. Not the political bloc of the Democrats or the Republicans, that you must be from a Bush dynasty or from other dynasty within the Republican, party. We need that kind of third force to come out and preach new ideas, breathe some new, some new life into our political system, and see whether we can get somewhere.
Mr. Keyamo, I must thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And I hope that voices like yours will not cease, but like you said, even shout from the mountaintop to ensure that Nigeria moves forward.
Yes.
Mr. Festus Keyamo, thanks for coming on our show. It's been really, really my pleasure.
Thank you too for coming.
On Signature TV interview today, we've had the pleasure of interacting with human rights lawyer, civil rights activist, senior advocate of Nigeria, Festus Keyamo. I am Vin Martin Obiora Ilo. Thanks for watching.